Hello and welcome to the Swim Brief. It is a pleasure once again to be joined by my two favorite coffee drinkers in the whole world. The proud father of an outdoor elementary school student, Joel Rawlings. Joel, how are you?
Just great. Just dumped him in the woods and got back now. So yeah, ready to roll.
Yeah. But I guess this is one of those things where in other parts of the country, it's child abuse, but in Portland, it's just parenting. Is that sort of?
Yeah. Roughly.
Okay.
That sounds about right. Yeah. The other day, the kids kicked over a wasp nest and they're running through the woods. And he's telling me about it. I was like, yeah, it's okay, great,
Okay.
dude. Come on, just get in the car.
Yeah, let's go. This is a long drive, and the traffic around here is brutal. Erik Wiken, who still to this date does not have any children that we know of. How are you, Erik?
Or him.
I'm doing pretty good. That's quite the intro. No children that I'm aware of.
It's in your bio, right?
Yeah. It's in
Erik
my bio.
does not know of any children that he has fathered.
Yeah. Yes.
I was in a WhatsApp chat with other parents from Olivia's first grade once. And, someone said like, hey, I just want to make sure that everybody on this WhatsApp is actually a parent of a kid in this first grade class, so there's no like weird stragglers here. So just go ahead and like introduce yourself and say who you're the parent of. And I just wrote, I have fathered Olivia. And my wife wasn't really too happy about that.
I think the other parents would be a lot more unhappy if you actually put down that you fathered some other kid too,
right,
in the same class.
Right.
So the dad's like, what the hell is this going on?
Yeah, two kids earlier.
Yeah. So that
Yeah. Anyway, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about Erik's favorite athlete of all time, Shaine Casas, is apparently going pro. We're going to get into that a little bit. We're going to discuss this long podcast with Eddie Reese that Brett Hawke produced. You guys listened all the way to the end, right? Erik?
Yeah.
Erik listened. We know Erik listened. Joel, did you make it all the way to the end?
I did. I hit the plus 30 a couple times though to get through some of the stuff. But
yeah. I didn't listen the whole way. I have to.
And like I said, I mean, what's nice when you hit the plus 30 is you can actually see Hawke's biceps shrinking a little bit because the protein intake just isn't hitting on the half hour like he needs it to.
He might have had a good. He might have had a. You're joking, but it's now that I think about it. What if he got in the weight room and he just had a really good pump, and then over the course of the hour, just sitting there, the blood was sort of coming back out. And you might be onto something here.
When you're saying joking about, I'm not joking about anyone that could crush my skull with just their left hand, whatever it might be. I'm pretty sure that one moment in the interview when the light went out, I think that he timed that just so you like slam a quick like whey protein or something like that, and just get it kind of like Keith Richards style. Just take the scoop, screw the water, we're just getting it mainline. Let's go. Next question.
I believe that's called dry scooping. Joel?
Dry scooping?
That's what the young kids are calling it. Call it dry scooping.
Got it. Thank you.
It's actually it's not advised. Just so anybody listening, you shouldn't dry scoop because the water actually helps you absorb what it is you're taking in powder form. So just PSA on dry scooping. Anyway, continuing on. Let's get to the Shaine Casas stuff first. And we got to hear from Erik because, as we said, this is really. I don't want to say, I mean, we opened up by saying Erik doesn't have any kids, but he's almost
this is his adopted child. Yeah.
He's adopted Shaine Casas's swimming career as his own. He cares about it as if Shaine was his own child. So Erik, what was your reaction to seeing Shaine Casas go pro?
I don't even know how to follow up that line of garbage you just threw at me. I guess it kind of came a little bit of a surprise, even the idea of transferring to Texas, and then obviously making the decision to go pro. There must have been something in that interim, maybe the realization that that's not exactly where he wants to be. So, I mean, I'm not in his head. I don't know what's going on exactly.
Right. It's kind of a one way. All the affection goes from you to Shaine.
Yeah.
You don't get anything back from Shaine.
I don't get anything in return. No, there's no follow back.
Yeah.
But it just seems to me that he's, if I'm making assumptions, which I am,
that's all we can do. That's all we can do.
This feels reactionary. This feels reactionary to the last 2 months that he had, 3 months actually, he had at A&M. We saw, or some of us maybe saw it. It was an interview with him regarding the possibility of not actually swimming at NCAAs, like putting so much anxiety in, like so much pressure on himself to perform, so worried about performing for other people that he almost dipped out. It didn't swim at NCAAs. And then when he got there, there was a bit of more anxiety, it causing him to perform at a really high level, but maybe not a legendary level. So, and then we got the news of the public intoxication shortly thereafter, and lead up to trials, where trials didn't go particularly well, and being on deck and being amongst everything that was going on, it seemed like, again, there was a lot of pressure buildup. So there's all of these things that are happening and creating essentially this situation where, like, all of these things that are happening are negative, and I'm here in A&M and it's negative. Therefore, I must leave A&M. Now, that's possibly a line, or at least there's some kind of subconscious there. It's not that far of a reach to go that way. And obviously Austin is close. There's a lot there to offer him in terms of training. He's going to have a great training group if he does decide to join the men's team. He's a Texas native, which means the cost of education is low, and we all know that Eddie doesn't give out full scholarships, so there would certainly have to be some payment involved. And given his time of transfer, there's probably no money, even for Shaine Casas. So, there's certainly a bit of that, but then that begs the question, is he really going there for the education, or is it just a matter of, right now, I just want to swim? Like, how important is that education? My only concern was, as I shot to you guys both right before all this, was some somewhat telling things, again, making assumptions. You see it as bio on the A&M website. There's no dad listed. Right below that, Jay Holmes, he used the word to describe Jay Holmes. It was dad. Jason Calladaw, second dad. So, the writing's on the wall that whatever has happened in this young man's life has been not the greatest, and the life he had at A&M was certainly something that was needed. I don't think he would have said those things had he not meant it. It's just, what it says to me right now is that could be a number of things, but there's a possibility of that he's outgrown his time here at A&M. Talk about kids progressing and changing coaches and changing who they are, and where they're not changing who they are, but just realizing who they are and where they want to be. And that's certainly a possibility. It's just, we don't have anything much more than an August 31st Instagram post, saying thank you to A&M.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, to me, it just maybe even simpler than that. It looks like somebody looks like he was not happy, and so he thought about, what can I do about that? Well, I'll make a change. What kind of change can I make? I guess I could go to Texas, and for whatever reason, maybe at some point that plan was involved attending school at the University of Texas, and in between then and now, it just turned into, like, let's just focus on the swimming part of this.
Yeah. I mean, he's on the USA national team. The money is there in that way. If he would have made this decision a little earlier, he could have made the ISL draft and made a lot of theoretical money, assuming he'd get paid. But
and I mean, I think, if we even go back to, and now we're doing all the armchair psychology here, but if we even go back to, you reference, I'm really glad you brought up the NCAA interview again. I'll just say, having worked with a lot of kids on this anxiety, you can call it, sort of being overstressed around competition and stuff. One of the most frequent factors there is just a feeling of like, this is a really stressful situation and I'm on my own to deal with it. And that's not me placing blame on any of his coaches. How you get to a place like that as an athlete is pretty individual, but and you can have a great coach and still feel like, I'm on my own to figure this out, and just not even know how to interact with your coach to get relief from that. But I can imagine it's very, very stressful, and you know, it looks like maybe training at Texas is less lonely or whatever, in that sense, that there's more people at a higher level. You've got, and we'll get to it in a little bit, you've got
the wisest.
Yeah. You're one of the guys versus the guy. And you've got, the wisest old guru grandpa in Eddie Reese there, who I can't imagine being around him doesn't reduce your anxiety about competing in swimming. Like, I think I would, if I, could like coach next to him, I think I would be a less anxious coach too, just listening to him talk, because he has that wonderful blend of many things. Anyway, we're not going to get into the Eddie Reese stuff yet. I want to give Joel a chance to talk before we get there.
I saw Major League, remember Bob Uecker was in the booth, and like, hey, anything to add? And I was like, no, I was like, they don't call him the best color man in the business for nothing. It was like, I don't know Shaine Casas. I don't know anything about him. And I think the thing is, what I look at is you got a kid, any kid, and especially one that becomes known at national level. So obviously not known where he's going to get, mobbed for autographs on the street, but he's probably got a Twitter feed. And you get all this stuff, especially like I worked in Texas in the 90s. Texas is about as territorial about their schools as you can possibly get. And people are going to just launch all this negativity. And it's basically, when I look at all this stuff, it's like, so many people, when they get to the internet, they think it's about them. It's like, you know what? It's not about you. They're like, Shaine's life, it's not about you. And the hidden, leaving, people like, you're leaving one of the best countries. Yeah, he's a good coach. It's not about you. And it's like, this is what the guy's thinking for the best. And you just hope that he's able to kind of navigate it. But it's like, I just feel bad for the kids in this generation now. It's just everything they do, every mistake you make, everything you do, it's like, here it is, it's on display. And of course you can say, well, they don't have to be on Twitter. It's like, yeah, they kind of do. Yeah, that's this generation. It's like, they have to do that like they need to breathe. And it's one of those where,
well, also, if he's going to go pro,
yeah, it's going to be there.
Yeah,
and
he needs
it's
to have
like,
a brand.
Again, at no point does anyone tell you how to handle this kind of stuff that's going to come, especially the negative vitriol that's going to come your way. It's like, what? And you look at, like, in the NFL, they have whole classes for rookies on how to handle media, how to handle all this other stuff, how to handle your money. There isn't any of this coming for a college swimmer. Basically it's 99% of it is you're done swimming. That's it. That your time ends, and swimmers have to learn how to deal with that end point of their career coming, whether they like it or not. And here's someone's like, well, I'm going to go pro. It's like, none of us really know what it's going to take to become pro, because now all of a sudden you're managing your own training, you're in charge of your own everything else. And again, that's something that was never taught to you at all. There's no class, how to become an ISL athlete, or how to transfer through and navigate all the rapids you're going to get with Twitter and stuff. And so again, this dude's on his own. I feel bad that, I hope he doesn't feel on his own. I hope if he needs mental help, I hope he gets it, but I don't know him. And the thing I have is just all these people that are trolls, like, whatever's being out there, it's not about you. Stay calm, go back to your basement, enjoy mom's meatloaf.
Yeah. I mean, he got really lucky with I mean, I did go through the comments on the one Instagram post that he's had, and it was all positive and supportive. Like there was nobody. I didn't venture to Twitter. Twitter is a much different place in a lot of ways than Instagram.
But Twitter's all about angry people.
Hey, Twitter's got nothing on the Swim Swam comment section. You guys see everything with Cliff Keller today? I think I read
not gotten into that yet.
Oh, don't.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking, you know, does he, now that we've seen what Katie Ledecky has done with being a volunteer assistant, does he follow that path? You talked about all the stuff in terms of support that one gets. Is if he's technically a volunteer coach, what does he have access to as a volunteer staff member? Does he have access to a lot of that mental health stuff? Can he just tap into the people there in terms of career planning? I mean, they're starting the NIL classes already at Texas. The day that came out, that day they said they have all this stuff lined up. You know, he's in a great place to get that kind of support for his future being a professional athlete. It's kind of, we're just kind of wait and see, and hope. I really do hope it works out, because it's not just because of being a Shaine Casas fanboy, Chris. It's, you know, you want to see somebody who has certain intangibles, and him being so willing to share what's going on in his life and how he has been dealing with stuff is really critical for younger swimmers to see that and have somebody to look up to that. Like, he's sharing all this stuff. He's super insecure. It's, everybody has those problems.
Yep.
And he's not a Michael Phelps. It's another voice having that. So.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we tease Erik, but I speak for myself and Joel. We're also cheering for Shaine.
We definitely
love seeing some fast. So let's pivot to Eddie Reese. Eddie Reese did about 100-minute podcast with Brett Hawke. Two of them sitting in what looks like maybe Eddie's office or an office at the University of Texas. Brett was on location there in Austin, and gosh, it feels like everybody's talking about it, so we must talk about it. And I just I think, like, let's go first a little bit, just broad picture, each of you, maybe some highlights that you took away from it. I'll give the highlight from at least the part I listened to, which was like the first hour. And then let's talk about what we thought of the podcast overall. I will try to explain to our audience why I so disrespectfully didn't listen to the entire thing. And then way at the end, we'll discuss Brett Hawke's nutrition. Okay. So I'll lead off. You know, it did feel like, if you're coaching swimming, you can't avoid having heard of or heard from Eddie Reese in a number of formats. This seemed to be this sort of stands apart from other things I've heard from him. And particularly, like, I really enjoyed the line of questioning from the very beginning, because Hawke got, like, right there. He was like, so you retired and then you unretired. What's up with that? Which is, like, awesome, because isn't that the question we all want to know the answer to in this situation? Like, you're like a legend and you retired, and then all of a sudden you were not retired. What's going on there? And it's really fascinating to listen to Reese's answer. I don't think we got 100% of the answer, but I think we got a big part of the answer when he just said, like, yeah, I was having trouble moving around and it wasn't fun to coach. And so I thought, like, I just can't really do this anymore. And turns out I could get a little bit of that mobility back. And so I'm coaching again. Another really sort of fascinating answer to hear, just listening to him go through various athletes and weave in stories of sets and this and that and the other. One thing that it was just a sentence in there, but I found really resonating with me, was when he said, we looked at Brett and he said something to the effect of, yeah, but you know what these guys do, as coaches, we're only 10%. And I've always believed that to be true. But it's such a dramatic statement from the guy who everybody agrees makes about as much of an impact as you can as a coach. And even he says, yeah, well, we don't make that much of an impact, really. We don't determine how fast people swim. So I'll turn it over to you, Joel. I'm curious to hear what you took away from it, and you can react to anything I said as well.
That's good. I think we'll talk more at the end about it too. Is like I thought there was kind of two layers to it. Obviously, the first layer is just the information you get for Eddie Reese. I mean, for me, it's like I got the attention span of a ferret, probably on crack. I can't. But if Eddie Reese is talking, it's like 5 hours. All right, looks like I'm 5 hours, and that I'll listen to everything. And the amount of information that he has, just the throwaways of like, breaststrokers doing flutter kick, the increased capillary beds, I never thought of that. And again, you can coach forever and Eddie Reese will still come up with something where you're like, wow. So they got the first layer of just the information dump you get from him, and that's great. I think the second layer is when you look at, again, his answers versus the questions. You can kind of look at coaches versus, you have like basically process-based versus outcome-based is how it's kind of starting. When you start looking, why is this person asking this question? What are the questions that Brett Hawke is really interested in asking, and his reaction to some of them where he's shocked. Again, when he asks questions, part of it is for his listener base, part of it's for his own personal knowledge, but you can definitely see outcome versus process, and how I think that's the key when you try to boil down everything from Eddie Reese. Obviously, the knowledge, the calm demeanor is a big part of that. Again, right. I think when you have type A personalities, so many type A personalities in a room, and we would go when I was coaching the university team, we'd go to Coronado Island. That's where the Navy SEALs are. And the whole thing with Navy SEALs is basically you get enough type A personalities in a room, someone's going to be like, I am the alpha of this group. And that's that emerges. And that's the same thing where our calm demeanor works a lot better when you have a bunch of type A's like that, because they're going to go kill each other in a sense. And you've got to kind of make sure that kill each other, but we're still teammates and we're still good about this. And I think that was one of the magical things. So many things that Eddie Reese does. That's one layer of it. Obviously, the knowledge base, his nonstop improvement. I've talked about how I bump into him in a clinic here and there where he's in the audience listening. He's a guy that obviously could do every clinic, but he's out there getting one more piece of information, no matter what. And again, how much time he has for so many other coaches and so many athletes. I think that was a pretty cool thing. One thing I got at the end, and I'm just kind of, because there's so many things that everyone's like, well, yeah, I got that. I think one thing at the end, I don't know if anyone listened to, was like how the AD was on deck, Wyatt's there, Coach Reese is there, and the AD's like, write everything down. And Eddie Reese kind of goes, well, you're missing the point. You're missing the point of that it's about changing with the athletes. And I think the one thing I think a lot of people miss the point of missing the point was, why is the AD there telling everyone to write it down? And I'm thinking, it's like, you've already got someone that almost retired and you got a young coach who's going to take over. And so now I'm wondering if the AD was like, write all this down, as in you're the heir apparent, make sure that you have this blueprint.
Right.
And maybe they didn't feel like they're ready. Again, this is wild speculation. But again, that's kind of how a lot of ADs think. Well, you just write this down. If you write all the workouts down, everything will be fine. And that's what I always kind of hate about some of these ASCA clinics. Here are the top 10 workouts of this swimmer, and everyone just mad scribbling down. It's like,
yeah, no, I'm going to go do that when we get home. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's not going to work. You got all the puzzle pieces, but you don't know what the puzzle is supposed to look like, and that's what I like about this Eddie Reese interval is like, the sets that you might give out or the times he gets out. And that's kind of where Hawke's like, what about this time? It's like, that's not the issue. And that's what I thought was cool with the Eddie Reese thing. It was like, 154 was really fast. It's not so fast now, but that's not the issue. The issue is how to get 154 to 152. And it was like, well, 152, anyone could do it. It's like, well, at that time, no one could, and he could. And now you're getting 152, 140. And so again, it's about the process of moving. The time is just X, whatever the unknown quantity is you want. It's how do you get this to go to this to go to this, and get each of these people faster. And he just lays it out. It's like, you care about everyone, you treat them with respect, but you also give them these parameters. And I've seen Eddie Reese flip the switch where all of a sudden you're in the doghouse, or you're upset. He's upset, but it also, like, again, when it comes from love, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
So I got a lot out of that with that. But again, I don't want to take up the whole time, and we're going to talk more about it. But I think that little snippet at the end, the little throwaway about the AD coming and write everything down. It's like, why is that? But again, it's about thinking that the workouts are the magic. It's like that ain't the magic. You go on deck, you see where the magic is, and it's usually not the set.
No, yeah, no, I think, and actually you're right. I used to joke with a friend about, people going to clinics and they'd listen to Eddie Reese and then they'd come back and try to emulate the set. And I never went to those clinics. I didn't know how he laid them out. But in this one, it was very obvious, like, that he would lay out something that he was doing. And I can see a lot of people copying, like, oh, I should do that thing. But he was also very good about being like, here was the problem I was trying to solve.
Right.
Like, so to at least give the context of, like, maybe this is not a problem for you, or you're not there yet where you need to solve this problem. Like, here are the circumstances under which I came up with this as a solution.
Exactly.
So, and I think that's really, really important for people to understand before they just start leaping to, like, oh, I just want to do the same thing that this genius guy does, because the context is extremely important. Erik, what you got?
I've not heard Eddie speak too much about the ins and outs of coaching. I think the last time I actually really truly heard anything longer than a soundbite was a Chicago-based clinic about 15 plus years ago.
Okay.
And that was certainly something that I was not particularly used to hearing, a coach just being so open. And I know he's an open guy. I know he's got a lot that he does like to share, but that was really, really nice. And a coach who at times certainly does get fired up as well, but just hearing about him being that calm, consistent demeanor, that it's, as someone who tried to do the same, wants to do the same, doesn't feel comfortable jumping around, being all over the place. It's not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that. There are some pros and cons to that type of approach, but it just seems like that's the hot ticket thing right now, is you got to be all over the place and you got to be doing cartwheels and stuff for, during whatever it is. And you got to keep doing it all the time. Like, you can't turn off, versus somebody like him who just keeps things really on the level and just offers a bit of peace, to some of those athletes, especially the ones that are anxious, because every one of those guys has points that they're very anxious about something. And if you have a coach like him who's just like, let's let things play out, let's not get too riled up, and just approach it as it comes. I did also agree with a lot of, like, the process versus outcome, and just hearing him speak to a lot of that stuff. You referenced the situation where solving a problem, and he brought that up, where it was like 100 guys did well, 100 flies guys did well, 50s didn't go well.
Yeah,
what do I need to do next year?
Weren't any good.
Yeah. What do I need to do next year to fix that? It's not just, the context of everything, and just hearing somebody who's had so much experience and is so far into his career being like, I don't have it all figured out. He makes the joke that he's not ready to be a head coach yet still. And it's just like, okay, come on, Eddie. Now you're just messing with everybody.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think that's so much as a joke is like,
no, yeah,
but what I'm saying is that mindset is kind of exactly who he is, of like, I've got to keep learning. I've got to keep getting better for these guys. His ego in check. Those guys feel that. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He looks at it as, if I don't continue to improve, there's no way that I can continue to improve the people that I'm responsible. They've put me in charge of this aspect of their life that's so important to them.
Right.
I owe it to them as a service to. And then I really loved the way that he just essentially sets things out and presents it to the athletes, and it's up to them to make the choice. He alluded to some guys who came back and were afraid to actually talk to him because they know they screwed up and they know they didn't reach their potential. And it's really great to see, coaches who have that kind of success. And it's like, this is yours. This is yours to do with it what you will. And if you blossom and thrive, and that's fantastic. But if you don't, that's just where you are right now. It doesn't make you a worse person. It's just, that's who you are in that moment. And it doesn't necessarily determine who you were later on. And it was good that he was talking about still being okay with those guys and not not holding that against them decades later because they didn't do something for him, you know, in their early 20s, like just understanding they're not perfect people. And then like, yeah, the one thing that I didn't even think of or ever really looked into was his physical education background. And a lot of the stuff, that the fact that he was in control of their lifting up until it still is to this day, but just now allows whoever he feels comfortable with doing what they're doing. And, you know, I guess obviously some of those guys get big naturally, but I mean, the way I've seen it now, I look at it, these guys have never been super, super jacked. Like he's got a lot of guys who've just always been that same long, lean type that we've always seen. We see from other countries. You know, he's not making bodybuilders. Yeah, he's not making bodybuilders out of swimmers. You know.
Yep.
Which was cool. It's great to see that that he has that kind of interest. You know, and he's put in the work and he's put in the reading. I love that about him and how he operates.
Yeah. Kind of hopping in what you said there, like what I thought was pretty cool is when he said that, like, he really admired his brother Randy for being able to make athletes do stuff. You know, again, where that's kind of the coaching style of your will is the dominant will. Oh, and we've talked a lot about this, where that's where a lot of coaches get in trouble. Is again your will, your ego sometimes, and his was versus me, where I'm just getting athletes to do it. And the thing he said at the end of that, if you might have missed, is the part where he said, and I do lose some athletes because, you know, you don't get everyone to do it, versus if you made everyone do it, then everyone's going to be pushed along the same way. But he's like, I'm getting them to do it. And so I think that speaks a lot as far as like the different kind of relationship he's going to have with athletes, but also with the idea that, you know what, I'm not going to hit 100%. It's not going to be 100%, but it's not about me. And so that's why, again, where you take that ego out of it, it's not about me. It doesn't, you know, I'm not going to get everyone, but he's not there to work with the athletes that are looking for the cracks to slip through. He's there for the athletes that are there to get better. And that's his coaching style. And that's why he's able to step back. And also when you're saying how I remember Brett's like, you know, that long, lean, all-American athlete, it's like, you know, so I'm sure he gets the, you know, it's like, that's kind of what he's recruiting. Cause obviously he talked about like the dynamics of hydrodynamics of, you know, having that long body across the water, the hull is going to, you know, go faster than the shorter hull. But again, he's Eddie Reese, it's Texas. He goes to the grocery store. He can pick the apples he wants. You know, a lot of the other coaches, like, what do we have left in the at the, you know, the buy mart I'm at, where it's like, whatever's on sale that they'll take.
I was thinking the same thing when he said too. He said like, yeah, back in the 80s, you know, there would be like a couple good athletes, really good athletes to recruit every year. And now, you know, post Michael Phelps, post Ryan Lochte, like I feel like easily 12 to 15 great athletes I can get every year to come to my team. And then it's just a matter of coaching them.
So then you kind of wonder the direction. Is it like A, people just are lining up to go to Texas and that's it? Or B, also just how good coaching in general around the world has gotten, how committed athletes are at a young level to, like, you know, nutrition, training, all this other stuff. I mean, the different level of those athletes too is amazing. And he kind of talked also a little bit about the athleticism difference between, you know, again, you have one or two great athletes, they're great swimmers, but they're all pretty good athletes. And he doesn't see as many great athletes that are also great swimmers anymore, you know, where they're able to go, you know, hit 300 if they throw them on the baseball team kind of thing. Got guys that, you know, look like they're throwing lefty when they're right-handed, you know?
Yeah. All right. What do you guys think of Brett Hawke on the podcast? Again, I'll go first. I have a hard time listening to Brett Hawke on a podcast. And, you know, I know everything I say because of who I am comes out as like a knock on somebody. I just want to say, like, I actually really I've enjoyed Brett Hawke on a personal level every time I've been on a pool deck with him. If he were in my office right now, I think I would have an awesome time talking with him. I don't love him on a podcast. And I think there are probably two different, as far as I can tell, as far as I can self-introspect, there's probably two different reasons for that. One of them has to do with Brett and one of them has to do with me. So one of them, I would say, I don't like the parts of a Brett Hawke podcast where it becomes about Brett Hawke and not the guest. Like there was a section in here where Eddie started talking about Neil Walker, and I was so jazzed to hear about Neil Walker. And then Brett interjected with, it's funny, you're going to bring up one of my competitors. And then they had a brief aside about how Brett beat him at a meet. And that part I just don't enjoy. I don't enjoy that. It's his podcast. He's welcome to do that. And honestly, I probably, if I had beaten Neil Walker in a 50 free once upon a time,
you guys have tattooed on your forehead.
I'd probably be tattooed on my forehead, and I'd probably introduce myself on this podcast. I'd go, "Hey, I'm Chris DeSantis. I beat Neil Walker in a 50 free."
Be in your Twitter bio,
right? Yeah. And even people would be like, of course, swimming memories. People would be like, "Who's Neil Walker?" I'd be like, "You'd get irate with them and go, you can't. Neil Walker was the best. He was so amazing." And well, except for that one time I beat him. But anyway, that being said, that's just not for me. And then the other part of it is when I'm listening to Brett, I'm going to project on him a little bit here. When I say it's really about me, I don't know. I start to think that he misses coaching a lot and really misses that high end elite level coaching, that he got to do at Auburn. And that some of these podcasts are scratching that itch for him as well. And I feel a version of that makes it hard for me to even listen to Eddie Reese, because I just get super jealous listening to him talk about coaching that level of athlete. And the competitive part of me goes like, shit, why am I not doing that? So it acts as a bit of a barrier to me. And that's not a knock on anybody that I coach right now. I enjoy coaching. I can honestly say that I enjoy coaching kids from 45 in the 50 freestyle to 39 in the freestyle just as much as I coached somebody going from 21 to 20 point. And I'm not saying I was ever coaching quite at the level that Brett or Eddie was, but it's just different, and it's a different experience. And I find myself missing it a lot, and I get a little sad when I should just be, or not that I should, or just feel that I should just be listening and learning and sort of basking in what's going on. What did you guys think? Erik, I'll let you go first. What did you think about Brett in the podcast?
I agree with some of the ebbs and flows of that podcast. There were a lot of times where it was very conversational in a very positive way. Like it felt very natural. It just felt like I was watching two guys just kind of hang out and talk shop. And it was very much like the apprentice learning from the master in the best possible ways. But then you could see that there were some interjections at times where it was like his thought had to be shared, or the question needed to be there. And he alluded to it towards the end of the podcast that he was really nervous. He was nervous about doing it. He said he felt uncomfortable at the beginning of it. He started feeling more comfortable as it wore on. Now, I don't have any of the timestamps to see how his interruptions correlated with the time within the interviewer. He had certain things that he wanted to talk about and felt like he needed to get to. So things got cut short or interrupted, and it just kind of ruined the flow of Eddie, because there were a few times where you could see like Eddie was about to go into something a little bit deeper or a side tangent, and it ended up needing to be covered, but it got interrupted by another question, a follow-up question that might have been a bit early. I would have liked to, we got a little bit of a snippet of it. This is one of the things that I forgot to bring up earlier. Well, I'm wondering if this is, his opportunity is kind of like the re-education of Brett Hawke. And this was something that I actually joked with you, Chris, early on when you were doing the podcast. It was like you were kind of coming back into coaching and just having these conversations and dialogue with people. It seems like maybe this is kind of part of his motivation to be into this. And I'm hoping he took a lot away from this, not to say that he was ever a bad coach, but certainly gleaning some information. And the biggest thing that I took away from this, and I had, like I said, forgot to mention, was Chris Kubik's role in this juggernaut that was for so long in thinking about, he had mentioned Chris easily could have been a head coach, and, but that begs the question is, one, did he really ever want to? And two, Chris probably realized like the relationship and the situation that he had in Texas was so good that him being in charge of any program was moot. Like,
maybe it wasn't better in his eyes.
The ego, like, and he was working with somebody, they were co-head coaches. Like, it was just a matter of it maybe not being on paper that he was the head coach. They had such a dynamic and they had so much success and so much fun. Why would he want to leave that? Why would anyone want to leave that has any idea what they're doing? Like, I can't imagine wanting to leave a situation like that at Texas. Like, and it's hard. There's no other situation that's exactly like that. Like, you think about it, it's like, what difference does it make? It's just a title. Like, Chris has got everything he needs. Eddie's got everything he needs. These guys are happy together. Just put yourself aside and be great. And I don't know, maybe it's different today. You got to find your own niche. You got to find your own place. This is how you're going to, put yourself into this and make a name, whatever that is. It's just, I think maybe some people don't see that and don't spend enough time in a place to be able to glean some of that knowledge and have that experience. But yeah, I really do hope that Brett got exactly what he wanted from that podcast and this podcast concurrently, just because if he wants to be a great coach, he's got great people he's talking to really help supplement whatever it is that he feels he's missing. And
Yeah. Joel, any final thoughts? Brett Hawke thoughts?
Yeah, I think, I think anytime you start talking about a coach, I know that basically no one's going to be, if there's like even two listeners that go to your podcast, they've already cut off, because as soon as they're like, you're going to talk about Brett Hawke, it's like, people are going to turn it off because like, oh, here goes DeSantis being negative again. This dude hates swimming, hates coaches. But I think the thing is, it's, what scares me, anytime you talk about like an Eddie Reese, for instance, everyone's like, they're what you said, old, and they're going to jump on you for that. And you're like, whatever it might be. And it's the difference between being a fan and a professional. And what scares me about the coaching community in general is how many fans there are of coaches and how nothing that person, I'm not talking either about Brett or I'm just saying in general, you pick a coach, nothing about that person's bad. And that's more like a fan rather than a professional. Like for you, I mean, there's takes you've had where I'm like, I don't agree with that. It doesn't change how I feel about you. I enjoy talking. And the reason I do like to talk to you is, again, both of you guys, is the idea of different aspects. Erik's always interested about the mental aspect. You're interested about more of the moral aspect of a lot of these coaches.
Right.
And that's the difference between being that fan and professional. I was at a coach's funeral years ago, and he coached the collegiate team of men's and women's program. And the guy was just a legend, and everyone loved him. And he had all these great stories. And it's, of course, like stories from the 80s, where if you put them now, also
you go, okay, oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. But everyone is there. And if anyone was, obviously you're not a funeral, but if anyone ever say negative thing about it, you might get a fight. It might be a 70-year-old coming at you to punch you in the face, because he talked bad about their coach. But I was at that funeral, and this one woman that swam for him also came out to me. He's like, Joel, I'm hearing all these great things about this coach. Notice I'm the only woman here. And I'm like, I never thought of that. It's one of those things where all of a sudden it hits you. Again, kind of like we talked about Shaine Casas, it's not about you. It's about other people. The same thing here is like, you can have great relationships with people, but understand also that they're not, I think we deify some coaches so much. The nice thing is, obviously, with a guy like Eddie Reese, I've never heard anything ever bad about it. Every interaction I've ever had with him was pretty solid.
But he's also not a god. I'm sure he's made plenty of mistakes in his life.
and he admits it, and that's why it's like everyone's like, "Oh, Eddie, saying that you're not a great coach." Like, well, because he's like, I know my own mistakes, and so he's being real about it. But so many people want to put him back on the pedestal. Like, get back up on the pedestal. You've never made a bad set. He's like, you know what? I've crapped out a bad set. It's like it's not a great one. We're just not doing it again. But he's got an ego to do that. And so looking at this as the Brett Hawke thing, I'm not negative. I mean, shit, Brett obviously is not a guy I could do bicep curls with, but I'd go drink a beer with him. I'm not going to be lifting in the squat.
Well, you could do bicep curls with him. You just, you couldn't
mine
work.
Would be 12 ounce. His is going to be like 75s, going for it, obviously. So I like the guy, I've got nothing about it. But what I liked is, again, I see, you see enough interviews of Brett Hawke when he's younger, and you see the outcome based all about this. And what I like is, again, like the Eddie Reese thing, where he talks about the different stages. And I saw him in the 90s when he was a little more fiery, obviously because he was, 25, 30 years younger then. And as he ages too, his relationship with the athletes, his relationship with other coaches has changed also. And it's cool to see when you coach for a long time, you see the evolution of coaches. And the key is to not hold whatever they were in the past to that's what they are now. And Brett Hawke too, the same thing. I think what I'm seeing in some of these interviews, like with Terry McKeever and here, versus some of the ones with the Australian guys, it's a different interview. And I think it's a maturation that he's going through too. Yep. And I think that's kind of a cool thing. It's like, the questions he's asking are questions I would ask. But again, I'm interested in different things. I kind of like the sociological aspect of it versus like, give me another set. I want to write this one down. This is gold, and we're going to use this every 5th day, and we're going to call it the Eddie Reese set or whatever it might be.
Right.
But it's cool to see the evolution of them. And I think, again, sometimes if you look at some of the interviews where he talks to other Australians, it's kind of like, kind of gets the bro coach going. And when you talk to Eddie Reese, it's a little more like, again, when you see the outcome based, I really like that aspect of the coaching. Again, how you stay ahead of the game is being like Eddie Reese, which is again, at this point in the career, being ahead of the game is the guy that listens to the athletes, asks them questions, wants them to know they care. It's like, honestly, if any coach did that, you're going to be a really, really good coach. And you could write the same set every day of 10 100s on 130 or 400 skips or whatever thing you want to crap out. You're still going to be a great coach just because your athletes know that they care about you and they're going to bust a little bit harder because, again, you're not getting yelled at, but it's just, that Gary cares about your career as much as you do. Yeah.
Yep. Well, I think that's a great final note for this podcast. Thank you, Joel. Thanks, Erik, for coming on and talking. Thanks everybody for listening. I really mean that. Thank you to the 2 people who stuck through once I mentioned the name of another coach. Hopefully you can tell the other people that switched it off that I was not as bad as they thought. And I'll see you all next week.
See you.